Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and this is episode 249. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Stacy. That is at StacyPatton89. Stacy, how are you doing this evening?
Doing pretty fucking awesome, man. Sorry to the listeners. There's a rough loss yesterday, but nothing can bring me down right now. Just doing too fucking well, man. Doing too fucking well. Got to watch Michigan win two in a row. Hasn't happened since the Knicks were good for Michigan. And I got to watch Jalen Hurts put that anti-vaxxer motherfucker in a body bag last night too. I'm doing pretty great.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well on the football front. Not so much on the basketball front. But before we get started, I do have to make a few announcements. The first is the Strickland has an Instagram. Follow it. It's on Instagram. I'm sure that's an app many of you are familiar with. It is at the Strickland. So very easy. Give us a follow on there. We're going to be putting up more content, more little stuff on there. So definitely check that out. We also have a YouTube channel. Definitely subscribe to that. That gives us a big help. We're trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers. You have the rundown on there after each game. That's hosted by Sam, FB, at FBL_Sam on Twitter. And also Tyrese London's at London's Theory on Twitter. Jeffrey Rasmussen also chips in there. He writes a bunch of our recaps and does also the game threads. He is at Frank Barrett 119 on Twitter as well. So give all the three of them a follow and check out all of our stuff on YouTube. We also have some film analysis by Dallas Amico and Prez. So again, definitely subscribe to that. Check that out. We also have a Patreon. You can subscribe to that. There are a number of tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland that I do every Friday with Prez. You also get access to the Strickland mailbag that is hosted every other week by Drew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, the Doug Bag. He does that along with Dallas Amico. You also get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. And there are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod, where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful weekly articles by Jack Huntley and Matthew Miranda, two of the best in the business. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. Let's go with a variety of additional benefits like listening in on live recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day. Whether you choose to subscribe or not, none of this would be possible without you. So without further ado, let's get started. The Knicks went 0-2 over the weekend. They lost to Portland, 132-129 in overtime, and then they lost to the Memphis Grizzlies, 127-123 in regulation last night. I don't know. It's kind of I just feel exactly the same way about this team as I've been saying since the summer. So I don't really know what to do with that. It frustrates me. I still want Tibbs to be fired. I think that he has made some changes, but I don't trust him, and I don't trust him exactly because of shit that we saw last night in the first half, where when he had the full disposal of players that at his when he had the full talent, the full roster at his disposal, his minutes distribution fucking sucks. IQ played 9 minutes in the first half yesterday. That's not enough. I'm sorry. He's just way too important to the team. He's way too good. He has to play more. If he can't
And
play
he's
more,
shooting well too, playing
yeah,
well. He had 2 assists. He should have 4, which I'm the last one to rip on Obi for missing open chances because he doesn't do it very often. But he missed an open 3 on one of the best passes of IQ's career. I think you might have posted it or someone posted
yeah.
it.
He took Jaren Jackson off. Jaren Jackson was trying to bait him into like taking him one-on-one. He did take him one-on-one, burned him, but then he didn't force up a shot. He kicked it to Obi for a
And
wide
he
open
jumped
three.
and like he used the jump to freeze the other defender. And then he had another one where that was the second one is actually the more impressive play because he was just extremely patient, got the defender on his back. I forgot who it was. He got the defender on his back. I think it was Adams helped, and that's what forced the miss. But he drew the help defender, and then he baited him just to the right minute to get Obi an easy layup. And that's a. I think Adams is an amazing player, and I think he affects players even when he isn't in good position. So I'm not going to kill Obi for that, but Benji posted that, and it was absolutely IQ had 6 and 2 in 9 minutes, and he should have had 6 and 4, and it's like 3 shots. It's just it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's stupid. This coach is a fucking moron. He's an imbecile. He is a
We should say
dinosaur.
IQ got hurt, and for it, for what it's worth, maybe it was.
No, it doesn't
the
matter.
actual-
No, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. He played him 9 minutes in the first half. He was fully fucking healthy. He had Derrick Rose running point. Derrick Rose, I just want to let Tibbs know this, and anybody listening, he fucking sucks right now. Derrick Rose is not good at basketball right now. He plays like a chucker. He doesn't pass the ball. Doesn't get anybody involved. Doesn't play like a defense.
And he doesn't. I mean, do you
He
think,
looks terrible.
It's tough. It's tough to. I'm no expert on this, but do you think he looks not a step slower, but just enough slower where what really works for him is he doesn't draw a lot of fouls at the rim. He has, when he was really good on the Knicks, when he still is, he's able to, use his speed and these crafty finishes. But even the first time the Knicks got him, there's an article on PNT. I don't know if you wrote it or maybe it was Alex. I don't remember who it was, but the whole thing was that Derrick Rose post-injury, the biggest change was he just didn't draw fouls. And his 2-point percentage plummeted because he tried all these crazy finishes. That was working, but just that smallest drop in athleticism, makes that maybe not as efficient, right?
It also, who cares? Like, he's 34 years old. He's 34 years old. He is so irrelevant to anything that matters for this team. And the fact that we're still indulging this shit is a joke. Is a joke. And it's on the front office at this point for indulging this fucking imbecile fat fuck of a coach. And it's on Tibbs for being an imbecile. Like, I don't care. He said it after the postgame yesterday. Oh, yeah, I'm going to stick with the 10-man rotation. Why? Like, everything. This is how I know he's never going to learn. He's never going to learn. He's never going to change. And anytime you think he's changing, it's just because of circumstances. He went to a 9-man rotation during that West Coast trip. And what were we told? Oh, Grimes is situational. Grimes isn't ready yet. He's working his way back, blah, 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 blah. Then he had injury, so he had to play Grimes. We saw Grimes wasn't situational at all, that he was definitely fine. He is fine. He looks actually very good.
But that's a little problem. I mean, we don't know the background of the.
I don't care. So I don't know the background, but I know this. I know
there are gray. I mean, it happens more.
I know on Friday night. Hold on. I know on Friday night, Grimes didn't play. On Friday night when they played the Suns, he did. Or sorry, not it was third. Whatever, they played the Nuggets on Wednesday night. Okay, put the Nuggets on Wednesday night, and I know that Grimes didn't play in that game for whatever reason because he was situational and blah 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 blah. Whatever the reasons were. Okay, he's working his way back magically. Just total magic. They played the Suns it was Friday. Friday they played Golden State. He didn't play in that game because he was injured. But he comes in at the end of the game, garbage time, whatever. Rose doesn't play, right, against Phoenix because he was hurt or wherever the hell it was. Grimes comes in. Not only does he play, he starts. He starts magically on a West Coast road trip where you don't have practice time between Friday night and Sunday afternoon. This guy morphed into he's ready to play Tibbs starter minutes. I'm sorry. I don't buy anything Tibbs is telling me. I don't buy the explanation that was given. And at this point, like, so this entire West Coast trip, I praise Tibbs, like, because he had this 9-man rotation. And because of the 9-man rotation, you were seeing different combinations of things that we hadn't seen before. He was staggering more. And all of that yesterday was gone. It was gone. And the only reason it happened in the second half is why? Because Quickly got hurt. That's it. That's the only reason. Otherwise, it would have been 10-man rotation, hockey subs, and that's it. Because that's what Tibbs does. And on top of that, he had no idea what he was doing at the end of the game. Grimes, like, okay, yeah, I know he didn't make a lot of shots. I get it. He also was the only one that showed a pulse on John Morant, which, like, isn't really a knock on anybody because John Morant's a tough cover. But guess who killed the Knicks down the stretch in the fourth quarter?
That's the nicest thing you've ever said about John Morant, by the way.
I know. It is. Guess who killed the Knicks down the stretch in the fourth quarter? Was it? Oh, it was John Morant. Wow. Amazing.
Well, I mean, so that decision, and we can get into this later, but I think there's a distinction between Tibbs's insane decisions and then his, like, okay, I get it. I still think it was a wrong decision. You know what I mean?
No, I think that's an insane decision. I think that is an
Cam
insane.
Cam was playing well.
But Cam he's not defending John Morant well. The game is your game. You were scoring regardless of the lineups you were putting out there.
But I'm saying I don't think it's insane because
I think it's insane.
He's a good defender. He's a good perimeter defender.
It's insane. You could not stop John Morant the entire fourth quarter.
And he didn't put Cam on Ja, really. So
and when he did, he, like, You had actually done an excellent job on Ja for the most part until the fourth quarter, I thought. Like, I thought for the most part, the Knicks had done as good a job as you could hope to do on Ja Morant. Okay. Grimes and Mitch did a really good job defending that Ja Adams pick and roll. To not even attempt it in the fourth quarter is stupid. I'm sorry. That's unacceptable to me. That's shitty coaching. And it's demonstrative of a coach who is scared to make tough decisions. What tough decisions does he make? Yeah, you know what would be a tough decision? It would be tough because RJ actually played a pretty decent offensive game yesterday. It would be tough to be like, hey, you know what? Right now, we need what Grimes is doing more than what you are bringing to the table. And that would have been the right choice, by the way. It also might be a tough decision to be like, hey, you know what, Julius? You're not really doing shit defensively, which has kind of been the norm for you throughout your entire fucking life. So what we're going to do is we're going to play Cam at the 4, and we're going to put Grimes in. We're going to play small. Nope. I mean, look, are these tough decisions? Do they guarantee victory? No. But the fact is he never makes these tough decisions. So all you're left with is trusting his decision making and just being like, well, he made the right choice, and that's that. At the end of the day, the fact is Grimes not getting a single rep in the fourth quarter that mattered defensively on Ja was stupid. Would that have won them the game? I don't know. There's literally I can't tell you for sure anything I suggest would win the game. But I will say this. I will say that as stupid as I am about many, many things, basketball, life, football, whatever the hell you want to talk about, I'm pretty much an idiot about everything. But I know this. I know at the start of the year when he was sitting there training camp, oh yeah, Evan's gonna start. And I was like, that's stupid. Evan should not start. Evan shouldn't even be fucking playing. And the Alan Hahns of the world and the fucking losers that fucking want to just suck off Tibbs and every one of his decisions are like, well, we gotta trust him. He's the coach. He has credentials. Fuck you. You didn't do shit. And guess what? I was right. Because who's out of the rotation now and who deserves to be out of the rotation? Evan Fournier. Yeah, I was right. We were right. A lot of people, a lot of us idiots that just blog and content creators, oh, you guys just want to cry about Tibbs. Guess what? I guess genius Tibbs ended up having to agree with us too. Okay. So, like, I can't guarantee any choice. I can't say, oh, I know this for a fact. No, but I do. Guess what? I know one thing for a fact. The choices that Tibbs made yesterday, they didn't stop Ja Morant at all. And to lose a game that you put up, the Knicks put up 61 points in the second half. They put up 123 in regulation. They didn't even shoot the ball well. They put up 40 points in the fourth quarter. To lose that game for a defensive-minded guru, I'm sorry. We've seen enough this year. Alarm bells got to be going off. If you're in the front office and you're watching this shit and you're just like, well, he'll figure it out. Like, I'm not somebody, I've consistently said I think the defense will come around. We're a quarter of the way into the season. And the excuses of the defensive personnel, I don't buy it anymore. I'm sorry, man. If I got to watch another time, somebody just nominally gets into the paint and I see the weak side defender all the way down, leaving the corner 3 open or the weak side wing open. This is every single guy in the team does this. When every single guy in the team is doing that thing, that is not on individual players. Now, is that to say that I saw RJ do it and have a shitty closeout a few times yesterday? Does that excuse that? No. Can you execute it better? Absolutely. But when there's systemic things that teams with players like Ja Morant, and we saw this against Phoenix. Phoenix exploited this with a player like Devin Booker, players who command attention. This scheme, like it almost like it overly compensates for these guys. And it makes them, especially like Morant's a pretty good passer. I don't think he's a great passer, to be honest. I think he's like a good one who draws so much attention that kind of opens up opportunities. I don't think he's like some, Steve Nash eyes in the back of his head type of passer or something. But like when you are playing against teams, and most teams have at least one player who commands attention like that, they can pick you apart. And we've seen this time and time again this year. We've seen it in previous years with Tibbs. Obviously, when the rotations and all those things are better, that's fine. And the ultimate thing is this: nobody on this team wants a defensive rebound. Nobody wants to get a body on somebody. Nobody wants to box out. At some point, that is about coaching. Because you know what? Boxing out is like a very fundamental thing. Extremely fundamental thing.
Would you
If
say Mitchell Robinson's boxing out has improved under Tibbs? And he was really bad as a rookie and even his second year.
I think it has improved under Tibbs. Is that because of Tibbs? I don't know, because I see other guys that haven't improved at all under Tibbs defensive rebounding.
Sims?
So yeah, he has. Is that him though? Is that Tibbs? Because I know that we have one of the largest development staffs in the league.
IQ?
Again, is that Tibbs? I don't know.
No, but I'm
Like
saying like this attitude that the Knicks. I do think at the forward position, Julius, and if I'm gonna be fair, Obi as
RJ
well.
and RJ. RJ's been terrible this year on the boards, as far as
And
I'm
Cam
concerned.
Cam has never been that guy as a rebounder, but he hasn't improved there for all the other improvements he's made. So
I will say I don't think I've noticed. I haven't. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I have to go back and watch all his minutes. I haven't watched a lot of possessions of his on defense where I'm like, oh man, he should have boxed out his man there. I've seen that a ton with RJ. I've done. God knows I've seen it with
you're talking
Randall.
about with Cam. Cam,
Yeah,
you don't think he's missed boxing?
I mean I could be wrong. If and I'm
He's
open to
also
that.
more active contest. The thing is, like with RJ and Randall this year, they're neither, they're neither active contesting the shot nor getting the rebound. So it's like, well, what are you doing?
Can I just tell you? Can I just name some random teams that are better at defensive rebounding than the Knicks?
How are you defining defensive rebounding?
The
Percentage?
defensive rebound percentage.
Okay, yeah.
The Knicks are 28th in the NBA. You want to know who's 27th? The Brooklyn Nets, who play Nick Claxton and Ben Simmons basically at the 5. 26th, the Detroit Pistons, who have played a large stretch of the season without Isaiah Stewart, their starting center, who are basically just not playing Nerlens Noel. Maybe that's probably the reason why they're ahead of us. The mighty Houston Rockets.
Wait, you said we're 25th, so
no, we're 28th.
Oh, 28th. Okay, sorry.
This is on Basketball Reference. Maybe NBA.com has slightly different numbers. The Houston Rockets are 23rd. The Charlotte Hornets are 22nd. The Indiana Pacers are 19th. The Hawks are 20th. On and on we go. The Portland Trailblazers are 15th. Okay. The Dallas Mavericks, who are playing the corpse of JaVale McGee and Dwight Powell at the 5 for the most part, are 14th. Like, I'm sorry, this is just bad. Like, and this is about coaching. At a certain point, like, this is the same roster, right? That was a very good defensive rebounding team last year. Now, if they've fallen off a cliff this much with regard to defensive rebounding, and I feel comfortable saying this, I know that we had the insane Jeremy Grant whistle game on Friday, and I know the whistle yesterday wasn't particularly great. I don't think foul trouble and all that stuff has been too massive of like an issue for us. We're 18th in opponent like foul rate. That's not that bad. Like free throws per field goal attempt. So that's not terrible. It's not great. It's better than we were last year, I'm pretty sure. We're not a high turnover generating team, which has always been a thing with Tips teams. We are pretty good. EFG, we're only 13th. Like opponent EFG is 13th in the league, so it's not bad. But we cannot finish possessions. I mean, that fourth quarter yesterday was I lost track of how many possessions where they got one offensive rebound, they got two offensive rebounds. Like it was like anytime you got a stop, you didn't get a stop because they still would get the offensive rebound. And I am I piling on Tibbs? Absolutely, I am piling on Tibbs because I'm sick of this shit. Like I think he has tried to adapt. I think he has tried to make some adjustments. I think he deserves credit for a variety of different things, but I think it's over. I think it is over. This team no longer needs him, what he provides, his strengths as a coach. I think we have a clear idea of what our strengths and weaknesses will be with him as a coach. We know how he'll deploy the roster. We know how he won't deploy the roster. We know what he will try, what he won't try. We know everything there is to know about this roster under this coach. And I don't think he has the wherewithal to take it anywhere else. And I'll say this. I think it is alarming. It is alarming to watch Julius Randle and RJ Barrett's defensive decline this season. And even more concerning to me is RJ Barrett's offensive decision making. Yesterday was a lot better, by the way. So good on him. And like, I just want to like, I want to be very clear about this. I'm not blaming Tibbs for RJ's offensive decision making and all the shit that he's struggling with this year, because ultimately you need to have some individual professional pride and take personal responsibility for this stuff. And he simply has failed this year. RJ Barrett has. So he deserves the lion's share of the criticism. But if, like, this is a fact of life as a coach in any professional sport. If you are not getting the best out of your key guys on the team, if you're not getting them, and I'm not just talking about like offensive efficiency, but like if you're not able to get them to give the effort that is required to go the extra mile consistently, defensively, making rotations, setting screens, being unselfish, all this kind of shit, then maybe it's time to get a new voice in the room and see if they respond to them. Because we know that they're not responding to this guy. And if they are, if this is their response to him, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's time to go. And I'll say this: you're a Michigan fan, so you know this. If you want to say that Tibbs can change, Tibbs can evolve, Tibbs can do all these things, okay. I believe he could. He could. He
He's a
could
lot
do it.
older than the guy I think you're referencing. But
Yes, Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. Yeah, I thought he was done. I remember watching that Ohio State game in 2019, and I was like, yeah, I think this is about it. Then you go through the COVID year where they're miserable, 2-4. Everything looks terrible. You're like, yeah, it's over. They gave him one more year. I was like, all right, this is annoying, but I guess this is
with a
what we have
pay
to
cut,
do.
yeah.
With the pay cut. This man changed everything about the way he coaches. There's a huge piece in The Athletic about this. And I think it's like, it's pretty telling to like see how it's evolved. But the point is, when you evolve, that evolution requires a lot of different things. It requires a lot. And from what we've seen from Tibbs, there's not like a massive evolution, really. Like, it's not like he's bringing in coaches that he's not like overhauling his coaching staff, right? He brought in Rick Brunson, who he's known forever. He's going back to like guys he's leaned on, you know? I mean, the fact that he still is playing Derrick Rose the minutes he has says something about him. It's like, are you trying to evolve? Really? Doesn't feel like it. Maybe he
Well, I mean,
can.
I think when his back's against the wall, he's shown that he can adapt, or that he actually not just adapt. I think his best moments have come when his back's been against the wall. When he's forced to use Deuce and Grimes and quickly together, those defensive lineups are fun, man. And Sims. But what I also wanted to ask you is, I've seen also some people say that, fairly or unfairly, if you make young players earn it, it's good for them in the long run. Having that, and I think that's an implicit um, concession that that there is a double standard, right, between young players and older players. Um, what would your response? Do you think that is good for players' development, or do you think that matters? Or I mean, if Grimes didn't have to fight tooth and nail for a spot, and by the way, I think overall I'm on your side. That I don't think that to the extent it happened was the right move. If IQ didn't have to prove that he could run point, and he wasn't just the guy that everyone thought he was out of Kentucky. If Sims didn't really have to work hard to get on the floor after looking completely lost at the beginning of the season, do you think those high standards do help rookies and do help young players in their development?
Oops. Sorry, I was muted. No, I don't know if it is. It's different for different players. Like, some guys respond to certain things better than they'll respond to other things, right? Like, so you can't treat every player the same. Does it benefit certain guys? Maybe it does. And you know what? I would say this: maybe it would have better benefited RJ Barrett a little bit more if Tibbs had a tighter rein with him. With some of his minute stuff, especially over the last year, maybe. I know it's easy to say in hindsight, but like, I mean, again, I don't know what to make of his defensive drop off. Like, and I, that's one thing I don't really like putting on Tibbs, because it's like, what the hell? Like, he's
Well,
the
you suggested before that the lack of accountability for vets can play into that, right? Like,
I think that's all.
RJ try hard if Randall isn't held accountable.
I mean, so like, there's always, he's a Tibbs guy, right? Oh, Taj is a Tibbs guy. Rose is a Tibbs guy. What's a Tibbs guy? Oh, hard nose, blue collar, defensive. Okay, fine. So is Julius Randle a Tibbs guy? Because he seems to be a Tibbs guy. And I don't know if that guy does any dirty work at all. I don't know what to make of it. So is that a Tibbs guy? Is RJ a Tibbs guy? I mean, the way he's played this year, you would say no, right? But then he keeps playing him a shit ton of minutes. And it's like, all right, well, so
Well,
what is the
Randall
Tibbs?
definitely doesn't seem like a Tibbs guy.
Yeah, I
Like
don't really
there's one quintessential Tibbs guy. Who do you think is the quintessential Tibbs guy? I have a name in mind.
of all time,
Yeah,
probably like Luol Deng.
I was gonna say Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, he could be. Yeah, sure.
But what happened the last time he coached Jimmy Butler? It wears old even on. And Jimmy Butler has said things to the extent that he would still run through a brick wall for Tibbs. But I think he loses the locker room, or at least the narrative has been, and there is some empirical evidence again for this. The narrative has been that he loses the locker room because he refuses to hold players like Cat, like Wiggins, who I think was probably less of an issue than Cat in Minnesota. It seems like he just needed the right role, and was a young player with a specific archetype that needs time to let it develop. And maybe that's the case with RJ, but he lost Jimmy because he refused to hold the other players accountable. And I don't know if Jimmy hated Tibbs for that, but I think he hated his situation as a result of that.
He did hate his situation. I don't think he hates Tibbs. He's talked about Tibbs very positively
But
since
Tibbs was in charge of that
Right.
situation and
Right,
contributed to it, right?
Right, exactly. And like this is my thing is we don't seem to have a Jimmy Butler type who's going to go out there and sit down with Rachel Nichols and talk about, yeah, I went to practice and I busted all their asses with the backups and like I don't think we have that guy. But like I do think that what we're seeing now is some chickens coming home to roost from his long-term decisions. You keep talking about accountability. There is none for Julius. So I'm not going to box out. I'm not going to make that extra rotation. I'm not going to close out hard. I'm not going to run back in transition because if I do that, what's my reward? What benefit do I get from it other than maybe the team wins? But that's not a personal benefit. That's not helping me out. That's helping you out. That's helping the team out. That's helping out the organization, but it doesn't do anything for me. And do I think that's like if that's what's going on in RJ's head, do I think that's acceptable? No, I think it's unacceptable. But I will say this: I think it's pretty funny when you look at it. 4 guys that have struggled this year, same year as three other guys, including RJ. So all 4th-year players: RJ, Jordan Poole, Keldon Johnson, DeAndre Hunter, whatever. These guys have all struggled to an extent this year. They all signed extensions. Does feel like some of them are probably just struggling with, hey, I got this contract. How do I prove that I'm worth it? Finding that balance and figuring out that, hey, like there's more to this game than just scoring that. Like you can help your team in ways that go beyond scoring. And I think RJ's, I don't know if he is figuring that out, but he has to figure that out.
He's been better the last few games.
He's been better. He was better yesterday. He was not better against Portland. He was terrible against Portland. That was one of the worst games I've ever watched.
He had some bad tunnel vision. Yeah.
Yeah, he was fucking awful in that game. That was miserable.
But what do you think is causing the tunnel vision? Is it selfishness? Is it the same things? I mean, I know you weren't the highest on him out of Duke. Do you think it's just the same things he's always had? And even the moments where it looked like he was turning a corner where, maybe red herrings, like what are you attributing that to? Because that's the most puzzling thing. These are not hard reads. We're not asking him to be Luka Doncic and hit the opposite corner, right? We're just saying when there's 3 dudes on you, look for a shooter.
I don't know. I really don't know. I would say that maybe some of this is stuff that maybe is hardwired into like how he's played over a long period of time and you need to redo it, which is another reason why do I think this, so this is the best way to put it, right? Do I think Tibbs is definitely telling him like when you drive, when you draw 2, kick the ball, find your shooters, I don't think he's not telling him that. I'm not under that impression at all, Tibbs may be many things, but he's not like no coach is ever going to be like, yeah, just ignore off your open teammates, just get your shots up, kid. Like, obviously, that's not what he's telling him.
Unless somebody ever hires ball don't stop, but that's a different
Or
story.
Fizdale. But like, I don't know how is he delivering that message? How is that message getting sent? Is he being forceful about it? Because one thing I've noticed, right? You go watch around. I see other games around the NBA. You watch other coaches. Pop has done this a lot in his career. We're not just not watching the Spurs right now, so I don't know if he's still doing it. But like, okay, RJ drives in the paint 2-3 times, forcing up shots, ignores open guys. Get him out of the game. You as the coach, get on his ass right there. Be like, don't send him to the sideline. Be like, what the fuck are you doing? Get in the paint. You got open shooters over here. I mean, there's clips of Pop, yelling at players, all these various things. And then what does he do? Puts them back in the game. You can do that. Like,
I mean, that's how Tony Parker was one of the more undisciplined players. I mean, he came over at 19, so understandable. But there's been a lot written about how rough Popovich and Parker's relationship was at first, right?
Yeah.
I think he probably coached him harder than any other player he's had. And, out of that came what we saw. So,
right. And it's like, okay, so like I don't see him conversing with players in the game at all. Like I don't see that. Like he doesn't when a guy comes out of the game, right? I'm not saying like you have to go hug them and like congratulate guys for having a good 7-minute run or something. But I'm saying like all right, for example, we know that there's like every time Obi gets pulled out of the game, it's usually because he did something that Tibbs is like, what the fuck are you doing? Right? Why like is it possible like when he comes off the floor be like, hey, look, I'm like over there, you got to box that guy out. Or call a timeout when he pisses you off. Get on him in a timeout. Be like, you got to box this fucking guy out. Blah, blah, blah. Put him back in the shoot. And I'm just giving one minor example, but like, I just watch this stuff and it's like, I just wonder, like, and this to me is what I mean. Like, I don't think he can take this team further. I don't think it's that he's not trying. I don't think it's that he doesn't want to win games. I don't think he has anything left. There's no creativity. There's no more evolution. There's no more adjustments. I mean, we're watching that game against Portland on Friday, and I'm like, I don't think he has any idea of like Anthony Simons is murdering you, and your big switch is to put RJ on him so that him and Julius Randle can switch Simons, Jeremy Grant pick and roll. Like, what are you watching? Like, what game are you watching if that's your plan in that moment in that game? Because if you're gonna do that, then just make it Grimes, make it quickly. I mean, shit, quickly did a better job on Jeremy Grant on the one possession he got switched on to him than anybody else in that fucking team did in that game. Like if this is the sum of what he is telling us he believes about this team, how he evaluates players, rosters, whatever, then I'm good. Like I'm good because I already have a pretty clear idea of what this team will do with how Tibbs deploys them. They won't be a bad team. They won't be an awful team. They'll be a 500 team. They'll also be a team that never tries any serious experimentation. We've not seen any Cam at the 4 or RJ at the 4 this year, aside from the Memphis game when Julius fouled out. That was it. Like, and yes, some of that is 100% on the front office. Like they've made a situation where you have two power forwards, so the vast majority of minutes at that spot are going to go to those guys. But like, I have a hard time believing no other coach would experiment with playing those guys more. Would have experimented at some point with playing Obi at the 5 more. I'm not just talking about this year. I'm talking about over the past 3 years. Like, there are games where we'll be down 25 in the 4th, right? Just who cares? You're not going to come back. Just try some shit, see what happens. Get a sample size on something. See how something works. Like try Obi at the 5 with a bunch of wings and see what happens. But we've never tried any of that. We will never try any of that under Tibbs. Whether we're down 25, whether we're up 45, it doesn't matter. He will never experiment with that shit. And it's not to say that that inherently changes the ceiling of the team, but it also just means that you don't have information to make decisions about your roster moving forward. And like this was the one thing I mentioned this in the last pod with Prez. One of the reasons I liked the 9-man rotation and was hoping that when Cam came back, it would be Rose was out, and the 9 guys would just be, Brunson, RJ, Grimes, Randall, Mitch, and IQ, Cam, Obi, Hartenstein, or Sims, right? Because naturally, when you have a 9-man rotation, even with Tibbs, with how rigid he is, you stagger more, so you find out more about different combinations and you get looks at different things. And I like that. I thought that was a good change he made during the West Coast trip. Now he's
I
about.
do think the cost of not playing Deuce at this point, with how good he's been at the Knicks' biggest weak spot, is a notable cost there. But I definitely agree that forcing him to stagger one way or another is a good thing.
Well, you want to know this one. Actually, I didn't catch this until I was kind of clipping some stuff today. You remember when he brought Deuce in at the end of the first quarter or first half, whatever the hell it was?
Yeah, it was the Frank. It was the Frank minutes, the
Yeah,
Frank
so
seconds.
yeah, gave him the Frank minutes, right? Do you know that he didn't have him guard John Morant at the point of attack?
Yeah, what's the point then?
So what was the point of bringing him in? Um, I just, I don't know. Like I just see stuff like that. I'm like, he does not know how to deploy the roster, or he's not willing to deploy the roster the way it should be deployed, or he can't, or whatever it is. I don't know. But at some point, I just don't care. Like just move on. Like I can't watch this stuff anymore. And I mean, I'm gonna have to, so it is what it is. I don't think it needs to be this thing of animosity. Like he is just at his limit. Like this is it. This is what he is as a coach. And it's okay. Like, but you can't tell me what, like you're like, oh well, who would we hire as a coach? I don't know. That's not my job. But you know what? If we had fired Tibbs at the end of last year and we had hired Will Hardy, how would we all feel about that right now? Maybe we'd feel awesome about it. Maybe we'd be like, wow, this is the greatest thing ever. Maybe if we had fired Tibbs at the end of last year and we hired Joe Mazzulla off the Celtics staff, we'd be like, man, this is the greatest decision we have ever made as an organization. We didn't do those things, which is fine. You're not going to, maybe the Knicks, it's also possible the Knicks fire Tibbs and hire some idiot, right? Like, it's all possible. But, if you don't try, you're never going to know. And right now, the Knicks seem organizationally, and this is obviously on the front office, they just seem stuck and incapable of trying right now. Like they are so focused on we got to make the plan, we got to be competitive, okay, that's all fine, but like you're not taking any risk. There's no risk being taken with this organization as things stand, and they don't seem interested in wanting to take risk. And that's a problem to me. And I think it manifests in stuff like do you think that they view Mitch internally as a long-term solution at the 5?
I mean, the word solution is doing a lot of work there. If they can get DeAndre in, they will do that. But they're also not going to be looking for help at center.
Okay, so
I think there was probably a reason why they weren't like, yeah, we have to draft Jalen Duren, or Mark Williams, or
Yeah, like I don't think that they hate Mitch, but I don't think they love him. I think they're probably trade him in a heartbeat. There were obviously reports last year they were looking at trading him at the deadline. Okay, so you had an option. You had a choice. You could let him walk for nothing. Or you could find a sign and trade and get some nominal compensation back. And that may have forced you to adapt, and it might have forced Tibbs to play and lean in on lineups that he's not comfortable in and force him to play Obi more. But they made the choice to bring back Mitch, right? They didn't want to lose him for nothing. Okay, fine.
Well, I mean, Obi has fit better with Mitch than Randall.
I agree. But to me, they feel like they never want to lose anything for nothing because they view every player and everything as we can get something out of this. We can get an asset out of this. Okay, that's fine. But I don't think this front office appreciates the cost of what it means for the talent on the roster. Because the decisions to keep Mitch, not just to keep Mitch, right? Because they could have kept Mitch and just signed Sims and then signed some douche third string center who didn't need minutes at all. And they could have rolled with that. But they didn't do that, right? They went out and they signed Hartenstein, who, by the way, is being misused by his coach. Okay. They signed a center who has a totally different skill set from the centers we've seen under Tibbs, who is a rigid coach. They signed him. So now you didn't just bring back Mitch, but you also went out and upgraded your backup center position. And then you still have Sims in the roster, who is probably like one of the most overqualified backup or third string centers in the league at this point. And so
I mean, the question isn't whether he's capable of being a second string. The cash question is whether he could start on a lot of teams.
right,
You know?
right. And so my point though is like the collateral of all of these decisions where you don't want to lose anything for nothing and you want to maximize, oh, we have this cap space, let's sign this guy because he's a good player and we want to strengthen the backup 5 position. And I get why they wanted to do that, but the collateral damage of all that stuff, right? And keeping Randall because, oh, we don't want to trade him for a loss. And okay, fine. You want to get back value for him. The collateral of all these decisions of we want to get value for this. We don't want to give up this thing for nothing. Is that a guy like Obi has no path to 20, 25 minutes a night. He has none. And a guy like Quick under this coach has no path to 25 minutes a night with a 10-man rotation that Tibbs apparently wants to run. And he also has no path to consistently getting point guard reps, which is a joke because we were going to play Derrick Rose. Like there's collateral damage. There's collateral damage. We won't get Cam at the 4 minutes because you still have Obi and you still have Randall. And there's collateral damage. Like you're not going to get, oh, what would Mitch
or maybe RJ at the 4 minutes. Shit, if he's struggling
maybe.
so much from the perimeter,
maybe
like that might be a good.
But the point is, like, you have overloaded this roster with pieces who all deserve to play. All these guys deserve to play, and you've picked a coach who is super rigid. So he's not like, a guy like Tyronn Lue. If you look at the Clippers roster last year, they were going like 12, 13 deep. Like he was just finding guys on different nights that had it. If they didn't have it, he has no problem just sitting them down. Like there are countless games last year you can go back where there were games where Luke Kennard was the greatest sniper of all time and like won the basketball games. And then there are games where it's like Luke Kennard plays 5 minutes, right? That's the type of coach you need with this roster. So they have given a roster that requires a fine touch to a coach who just wants to take a hammer to it all, right? It's like that's on them as a front office. I don't know what else to say at this point because it's just really frustrating to watch this stuff game after game after game. And it doesn't feel like there's any solution coming. And apparently, one of the solutions is let's trade quickly for draft compensation, which seems like a terrible solution.
I mean, like that. There's a lot of really smart people who I respect on Twitter who have made this point, and I just don't get it. It's like, well, you need to consolidate. Let's get rid of the guys who aren't contributing much right now, right? Randall comes to mind. Fournier isn't even playing. Fournier could help teams. I don't know. His contract is great, but ask Lakers fans if they wouldn't mind a shooter who can, do some stuff off the dribble and pass the ball a little bit, right? And shit on that team, like with how many players they have who aren't in the right spot on defense a ton of the time, like Fournier can give you that. Randall, you might have to suck it up and attach something, one of the protected picks. But the idea that, well, we have to consolidate, and rather than trade the players who are not actively contributing to winning right now, we have to trade the guy who statistically has done the most to do that for 3 years. At your weakest, right now, your biggest weakness is perimeter defense. It's between him and Grimes for best perimeter defender. We haven't gotten to see Grimes that much this year. But we've seen that of the guys who played consistently, it's been IQ by it, and it's not close. With Mitch being hurt, forget perimeter defender. I would argue IQ has been their best defender. If the Knicks were not a bad defensive team, I think he would probably getting a little bit more love for even first team all defense. So it's ridiculous. And it's like, well, we can't pay him and Obi and RJ, but or him and Obi and Cam, and they're all going to be up for extension within the next couple of years. But Quickly and Obi are under contract for another year after this year, so we're not really in that kind of time crunch. And I will always defer to Jeremy Cohen on cap, and he's like, this is not an issue at all right now. I think you used the phrase boogeyman cap crunch a few times, and it's a false thing. It's the same thing as like people crying about Mitch's contract. Like, we gave him $15 million a year. It's not impacting the cap is going up. It's already not an issue. People just complain about all the wrong shit, you know?
Well, it's like the thing with the quickly thing is just so ridiculous because it's like, oh, like the cap crunch. If the Knicks, let's just say for some reason, the Knicks and talk to quickly's agent, they're like, look, don't even worry about the minutes. Don't worry about any of this shit because this summer we are going to give you a designated max extension. Like we're good to go. Don't worry about it, right? That doesn't even kick in until 2024. Like what? Like this idea that like, oh my god, if they pay IQ like the cat, it's not going to matter for 2 more years, man. Like what are we talking about? In 2 years, guess what? Rose is going to be off the books after this year. Fournier will be off the books after next year. That's your money right there. And you want to know what? Now you got a big concern about the cap? Oh, there's a big. I feel like I'm in like a Meet the Parents where he's like, "Oh, Jerusalem, Tula Pula Pusli." But like at the end, right? Like you have. Guess what? Let's say we have to sit through this season and another season of miserable Julius Randle ball. You'd only have 2 years left on his contract at that point. Actually, be one in a player option, so maybe even just a 1+1, depending on if a team thinks he might opt out. I mean, maybe you should just move him. You know, like maybe. Look, let's be honest here. Let's if we're gonna put cards on the table, we're gonna be worried about cap crunch, worried about all this shit. Based on what we've seen so far this year, based on how they've played, maybe you just move RJ if it's that much of a crisis. Like this, and I don't think it's a crisis. I don't really want to move RJ. I think that if anything, I want to move Randall and see what this team looks like, him included, without Randall on the roster. Because I actually think that would be a pretty fun team and direction to go into. But I've talked about that forever, so who cares? Point is, like, this whole conundrum, alleged conundrum of the cap, it's of their doing. It's of their creation. They've done this. So now to turn around and try to use that, and I'm not saying the front office is doing this, right? This is stuff that's been posited by guys on the beat, like Fred Katz and Ian Begley. Maybe
it's the same fucking people that are like, you give $300 million to RJ, Randall, and Brunson without any idea of the cap dynamic. Yeah, the Randall's on a bad contract. RJ is not yet on a bad contract. But also, like, it's also, I mean, if I think about the way that I think the Knicks front office is operating, I'm sure they have taken calls. If they got an unprotected first in this draft from some team that could pick, early in the draft, if they have it, I mean, and this is a great draft. Let's not get it twisted. I think it's worth it if they have a chance at Wemby or Scoot Henderson. Yeah, they should be looking at that. Other than that, though, if it's like another protected first, if they're getting the Nerlens Noel, I don't think I think maybe, maybe certain Knicks bloggers would, maybe Stefan Bondi would, but I don't think the Knicks front office would. Maybe even Scott Perry would. I don't think Aller.
At the end of the day, this is right. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the reality is this, right? You can sell me, like, let's say the Knicks are like, look, we can get this first that we get for quickly. This is going to put us over the top, and we're going to be able to get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I don't even know if that's possible. Probably not. Whatever. But if that is the case, fine. Do it. Go for it. Great. Fantastic. If you're saying, oh, we get this piece is we're going to get Devin Booker. We're going to get, fine. If you're going to get a star and it requires giving up Emmanuel quickly, I will be sad. I will hate it, but I will understand it. If you need to give up Emmanuel quickly because there is, I don't know, somebody in this draft, Jarris Walker or somebody, right, that you just love, and you got to give him up to move up to get that kid, I might not love it.
Is Jarris Walker your guy? Because he definitely seems like he'd be your guy.
I do kind of like him. But I would understand that. I can understand these things. I don't need to agree with everything that you do. If I can understand the logic and I find the logic logical. But like, it is not logical to be like, oh, we need to trade quickly now to get a pick. And like, that's the end. Like, and yes, you can be like, well, the pick will eventually at some point help us acquire a star. But you're asking me to now believe in not just that you'll be able to pull the trigger, but that there is a star, and the pick that we're getting for quickly is going to be the difference between you know what I
In
mean?
a
Like,
summer where 3 of those were not the difference, right?
right. So it's just like I don't really buy it. I think that's bullshit. If that's the logic, that is bullshit logic. And anybody that buys into that or justifies it or is talking themselves into it is a moron. An
Well, I
actual
think
moron who doesn't understand basketball and should probably never watch basketball and should not talk to me about basketball and should not talk to the world about basketball.
yeah, and I mean, I think so I'll say a couple things there. I mean, I think that I don't think the front office is dumb. I think if you look at their bad moves, quote unquote bad, like they gave Randall that extension. In hindsight, was the wrong deal. They probably should do more to mitigate that. I get it, right? You had to do that. He was the first star New York had in a while. If they let him go and he was putting up 20 and 10, even if it was an empty 20 and 10, Bondi would be writing all these fucking articles every time he came back. Berman would be all over his ass every time they wouldn't be paying attention to his defense or whether he was actually helping a team win. So I get that. I get the Fournier move. You wanted to upgrade from Reggie Bullock, and for what it's worth, on offense at least, like that has worked. That worked last year at least in that sense, right? Pairing that with the Kemba move probably wasn't great. Pairing that with an inflexible coach wasn't great. But I don't think this is a dump front office. I think they're pretty calculated, and I don't think they're trading quickly just for incrementally a better asset. There's people that are like, well, what if we could turn him into an older player that helps us win? Who? Right? Are we trading him for Harrison Barnes? Because that might be a player that could help us win. I don't think we should trade IQ for Harrison Barnes. Yeah, so I think it comes down to fundamentally most Knicks fans are on the same page. Like, I think if you tell me it's an unprotected first from like a team that is likely to end up in the lottery, like if we got an unprotected first from the Pacers, I would get that. If you're using it to move up into range for like if they used quickly to move up for Ivy, I probably wouldn't have been the biggest fan of it. I would have rather used other players, but I get it. Yeah, so it all comes down to people. I think like it's just comes down to fundamentally different evaluations of Emmanuel quickly. There are people who see him as an eminently replaceable bench player. There's probably people who think he's like Frank, right, or just that kind of a player. And it's the thing is this: if you don't want to buy the on-off stuff, if you watch him on defense, like no intelligent person is ripping his no intelligent person is ripping him on defense at this point. Nearly every intelligent
Wait till the playoffs, pal.
Yeah, I like quickly in his role, but even he like there was. Let's go there. Tommy D posted the most fucking stupid clip, or sorry, Benji posted a clip where Randall had watched his man go to the corner and shoot an open three, and then quickly met his guy 2 feet beyond the 3-point line, put his hand up to disrupt the pass, and just because he didn't pick him up at 94 feet or at half court to press, and it was a good. I forget who the point guard was. I don't know if it was Ja or it wasn't Ja. It was a really good point guard, but the comment was, why is there no ball? It's like you're looking for reasons to justify your pre-draft pick. And shout out Tommy D too, because he clowned me for writing an article about Poku, and he hated Pokusevsky probably because he hates all fucking European players. And guess what? Poku looks like a solid NBA player right now, despite still being one of the youngest players in the league. So I'm gonna take a little bit of a victory lap on that one, and not just with him. I know you never liked Poku, so I'm gonna throw you a little shade there.
I actually had him.
Nah, but afterwards, everyone was clowning him for 2 years.
I'm still gonna clown him. I don't care about him.
It's fun to clown Oklahoma State, but glad to. Anyway, the point is, there's just fundamentally different evaluations of quickly as a player. Or maybe we're wrong. Maybe there is something over 3 years of on-off numbers and everything we see, and how even when the shots aren't falling, the way he stresses the defense, has no one is leaving it. Even when he shoots 30% from 3, no one's leaving him open. No one really wants to go under against him, and that opens up.
I just gotta say, he absolutely. If you don't get it, if you don't understand it, I don't actually think you understand basketball. I'm sorry, and if you don't. If you I don't care about the defense. Okay, fine. Go watch him absolutely roast Jaren Jackson off the bounce. I've seen Jaren Jackson defend a ton of guards and wings on the perimeter and hold his own. That guy is whatever his flaws are, fouls too much, can't rebound for shit unless he's playing the Knicks. Like whatever his flaws are, that dude is a freak for big guys as far as defending the perimeter. And quick, absolute. He turned him around. He had no idea where he was. He had no idea where the ball was, and quickly, he beat him twice on the same play. Effectively, like he could have pulled up for the step back. But then he's like, fuck it. I'll just burn by him again. Burned him and hit the lefty runner and got the N1. Like if you don't get it, like you're helpless. And this is why, like I said this last year. I said this on multiple pods last year. Like I think he is our best prospect. I've thought that since last season. Trading him just for a first round pick, it does nothing for me. Like now, if you told me
if it's unprotected from like Indiana.
Yeah, sure, whatever. Like, I don't know. To me, at some point, like, you have a lot of picks, right? I mean, and what? Oh, are we gonna? And is our coach gonna be the same? Because I don't really understand what we're doing. Like, we're gonna draft somebody really high, and he's gonna have to earn his minutes. Like, what are we talking about? Like, I don't really understand it. I'm very lost as to like what is like. I get the plan, right? The plan broadly is, build up your asset value, build up your asset stash, trade for a star. Cool. Okay. But like the process by which we're going about it is so stupid at this point. It's just bad. It is bad process at this point. Like to come into the season with this coach, with Randall still here, having added the pieces you did without removing the pieces that could easily be removed or should have been removed. It feels like the front office has given itself a lot of stuff to clean up, a lot of stuff to figure out, and it doesn't. I don't think they're even close right now. Like I don't feel. I don't. And maybe I'm wrong because like the only thing we've heard is that they've gotten calls on Quickly and Rose, and they've taken them. They've listened to offers. Okay, but like uh, those are like the least important things to figure out on this roster to me. Like moving Rose would be cool, great. I think they can probably do that pretty easily somewhere somehow. Okay, but what are you doing with what are you doing with this entire front court? Really, like that's a question that needs to be answered.
I would even include Obi in that because the defense is a concern for me.
Yeah, but that's fine. But it's like okay, but like you're like to me, if you're gonna trade one of those guys because of cap concerns or roster logjam issues or whatever, like how does it not make sense to trade Obi? Because you still have Julius Randle, who you apparently love and will like never hold accountable in any way, shape, or form, and will only play the 4 as well. Like, okay, if that's your choice, then that's your choice. Then move Obi. Then get like to me, none of this makes any sense. Like it just all feels very forced. And actually, like I'll say this, I bet there are teams around the NBA that are. I think there's probably some pressure internally on the Knicks to like, yes, figure out the roster log jam and all these, and get rid of some of these pieces and blah blah blah. And because of that, I think there are teams that are in the NBA that are probably sitting there, they're looking at a guy like Quickly and are like, this is a guy that we might be able to get for a depressed price because of his contract situation, the fact that he's already burned 2 years of his rookie contract, that he's extension eligible after the year, and all kinds of reasons. Like, I don't know. I'm not out in the front office, but I'm getting there, man. Because I think what we're watching so far this year is we're 20 games into the season, we're a quarter way into the season.
Do you think with a different coach, all those moves look better?
Maybe. I mean, I'd like to find out. The fact that we haven't found out because we've just kept the same coach is on them.
It really comes down to this to me, like, because I saw this because Bondi was on his. We need a hire and experienced head GM. The other thing is, I hate that line of thought for so many reasons. One, when the Sixers were doing something unorthodox, they decided to bring in Jerry fucking Colangelo, and he sucked. Or was it Brian Colangelo or which one is it?
It was Brian.
Brian Colangelo. Who ended up getting his very own Game of Zones episode. So I guess they accomplished something. That was fucking dumb. All right, spare me with the fucking experience and bullshit. Spare me with all that shit because you want clicks. You said it. There's two things that quickly change the entire dynamic of this roster. If the Knicks are not willing to do that, they deserve criticism, but I don't think that has much to do with a lack of experience or any of this bullshit. Like, how many experienced GMs have taken over other teams? Has Mitch Kupchak been a home run in Charlotte? No. So what the fuck are we talking about here? It's the criticism of Rose. I think there is warranted criticism of Rose. Just the things that I hear are just so fucking up the ass insane. Like if there's anyone still crying about that 19th fucking pick, God damn. I mean, I love Bones Highland. I can admit that Herb Jones. You're still crying about that pick. There's people cry about why did it take quickly over Bane. If you're still doing that shit, man. But that's the kind of criticism they get, or like you still hear this bullshit about. Oh well, they didn't want to do a true rebuild, which I think they actually did when they got here. And then Julius had a good year, and it complicated things. But they've drafted well. They've accumulated lots of assets. They're getting criticized for all the wrong stuff. And I think implicitly that's a knock on some of the Knicks' younger players, and that shit annoys me. So
Yeah. I'm so sick of this. I feel like we keep talking about the same things over and over again, and I don't even know. Like, there's nothing different we can say, right? And like the other thing, like I guess the one thing I'll say that maybe we haven't even really talked about yet is the front office absolutely nailed the Jalen Brunson signing. Absolutely crushed it. Jalen Brunson's 26. He is the best player on the team. I think he's playing at an all-star level. And I don't think anything he's doing is unsustainable. Now, for most players, what he's doing is unsustainable. But for him, it's not unsustainable because he is regularly this type of shot maker. So none of this feels unsustainable to me. Their entire purpose now, the entire focus of what you need to be is everybody that we bring in, everybody that we keep, everybody that we look to retain should be players that optimize they optimize Jalen Brunson, they optimize his skill set, and they mitigate his weaknesses. And if you don't do those things, then you need to get the fuck out. And that's how everything should be viewed at this point in time. Because he has clearly established himself as the team's best player. He is better than Julius Randle by a long shot. He is better than RJ Barrett by a long shot. He is better than Quickly. He's better than Obi. He's better than all of these guys by not an insignificant amount. He has been that damn good. That should be the point. But from what it seems like, that doesn't seem to be much of a priority. Like if we're really talking about who is the best players to fit alongside Jalen Brunson, then we would not be talking about Emmanuel Quickly. What is his trade value at all? He is the best. He is by far and away the guy that fits best with Jalen Brunson. Okay, and I know that boggles people's it just completely. People don't understand it. Like, how is that possible? They're both so small. Blah blah blah. Okay, man. Well, all I can tell you is that you can go through Jalen Brunson's two-man combinations. He's a positive with three guys. Three players. Emmanuel Quickly, 179 minutes, plus 20.1. Obi Toppin, 149 minutes and 37 seconds, plus 19.3. Cam Reddish, 254 minutes and 4 seconds, plus 0.8. He is a minus with everybody else on the roster. Everyone. I don't know. I want to believe these guys, this front office is smart. I want to believe that they understand data and they understand analytics and they value different things and they value a kid that they drafted 25th who's vastly outperformed his draft slot. That they value a kid that they drafted 8th and has put up with a bunch of shit and still keeps coming in with the right effort and energy and all that shit. But I don't know that for sure, and sometimes it just feels like they don't, and it worries me. It's concerning. And as the season goes on, I'm increasingly concerned with what we're seeing on the court and what it says about the front office. Because if they are cool with this product that we're putting out there right now, they're cool with the minutes distribution, the rotations, and all that stuff, then they are a much bigger problem than Tibbs is, for sure.
Do you think the front office is a bigger problem than Tibbs?
If they're cool with what Tibbs is doing, yeah.
I mean, that's a bit of a chicken and the egg thing. I don't know that they're cool with it. I also don't know that they want to make a decision now.
But
I mean,
like when? I just don't like. I don't like. You're 3 years in, okay. And Begley has reported that his contract isn't fully guaranteed. So let's just. I think it's probably safe to assume that it's like next year is the last guaranteed year of his contract because he got a 5-year deal when he signed. Okay, isn't this the time then that you would fire him? Because it's like, okay, you have one more guaranteed year.
yeah, but
Generally speaking, coaches don't want to go into a season, and I understand why they don't. Like Tibbs wouldn't want to go into next year, right? With like, oh yeah, just coach it out and we'll see what happens, type of thing. He'd be like, all right, extend me or fire me. So if you're already getting to that point, then why not just do it? And like, you would also give yourself again a sample of seeing how a different coach, probably Johnny Bryant, as an interim for the rest of the year, how he would manage this roster and how he would deploy it, both schematically, both rotationally, all those things. Like, would he have different ideas than Tibbs? Would he plan things out differently than Tibbs? You'd find stuff out. You'd get more information, and you get information about him, and you get information about the team. I feel like that's very worthwhile, and it's really, to me, again, like this feels like not. I don't want to say it's a golden opportunity, but like in some ways it is, right? It's like, okay, you know what you know about Tibbs. He ain't the one. Move on, and then you can get a like 50, 55 game sample on Johnny Bryant as head coach, so that you can make an informed decision on him. Maybe he's awesome. Maybe he's Joe Mazzulla and he's Will Hardy and these guys, and you don't even need to have a coaching search at the end of the year. But like, you won't know until you try. And just for what it's worth, again, Johnny Bryant was a finalist for the Utah job, which went to Will Hardy. Um, maybe he is one of these guys that has that creativity, that kind of willingness to view the game differently, right? Like, I don't know. I think we've talked about this before, but it's like Lauri Markkanen plays a lot of the 3 for the Utah Jazz. And if he was on the New York Knicks, he would only play the 4 and only behind Julius Randle. So, like, there's coaches that see a player like that and view him one way, and then there are coaches who see him and think, hey, what if I tried him in this place or with this lineup? And I think the Knicks need one of those guys.
I mean, also some of it is just basic stuff, right? But I mean, I think if the front office doesn't believe that a change would palpably improve this season's team, does it make sense to do a mid-season switch? Or maybe they want to wait till mid-season. I don't know. Maybe they feel like what the Knicks are now. The Knicks are now 9-11. It's been 20 games. That is actually when Fizdale was fired. Maybe they are waiting until All-Star or something like
that. Maybe. I don't know.
I think what we agree on is that it's none of the personnel moves for the most part that they've made, but it's really just it's Tibbs and Randle. And if they don't make those moves, then it is on them. But I just think people are complaining about all the wrong stuff. Like, I think there's people who actually believe that if they surrounded Randle with, if they traded all the young kids, I think that's what Bondi's coming from. I think if Bondi's was like, trade all the kids, just get some more picks, get some vets, and you would have won. Like, that's where I think these dudes are coming from, which just sounds really dumb.
Sorry, say that again. The Bondi thing. What did you say?
Well, I don't know what his real criticism is. Like, did he want the Knicks to trade for DeRozan? Like, I think there's genuinely people who think that, because I haven't seen him criticize the Randle extension. I haven't seen him criticize Tibbs. He actually thinks Tibbs is doing a good job. So it's like, well, it seems like what they're saying is the front office needed to get Tibbs and Randle better players around them. If that's the criticism, then that seems to be most people's criticisms on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
There's people who legit think that if we traded for DeMar DeRozan last year, it would have been a game-changing fucking move for the Knicks.
I mean, it would have been. We could have been.
Could have led the league in mid-range attempts. And
we could have been. We could be
bottom of the league in mid-range percentage.
We could have 8 wins this year instead of 9. That would be a huge game changer. So, no, look, I don't criticize them for that. For me, it's more like And I guess this is where like we have no clue, right? I think it's safe to say that James Dolan isn't about to invest into a front office that's trying to sell him on like a multi-year tank and build through the draft lottery kind of situation. Unintentionally, maybe, but not intentionally. But like, so I don't know what those dynamics are like. But like to me, after last year, it was so obvious what the direction needed to be. And I think even if they sign Brunson, they can lean into that direction. And that direction isn't tank. That direction isn't suck. The direction is, I think our young players are okay. They can be like a competent, competitive team, but not a world leader. So maybe we should just prioritize them. And like Randall doesn't really move the needle that much. Is he a bad player? Sometimes. But like I think he can be a good player somewhere. But it doesn't help us in any way, really. So why are we still persisting with this? And you would like to feel that the front office views the situation, and views things the same way. But when they don't show you that,
Well, I mean, for someone like Rose, right? We want to trade him, but they might feel like they can get a better offer, especially as teams have a little more clarity on their season and it becomes clear which teams are like a backup point guard away from, contention, right? Maybe that drives up his value a little bit. And in the meantime, if they have to bleed some minutes that could be going to Quickly, they're not overly concerned.
um,
Especially since if Quickly has, if they have Quickly's bird rights, or sorry, if they have his restricted free agency rights, for example, right? Let's say he does ask out. Let's say it goes to its extreme, and I'm sure there's been some rumblings there. They can either match, or if some team is willing to give him a Godfather offer, then that team is probably willing to give up picks for him, right? So I don't think they're in a rush right now to resolve that whole situation, even though we would like them to be. At least with a trade. Maybe they should have more urgency with Tibbs, but yeah.
I mean, I get that they don't feel like it, or they don't view it the same way, but I don't agree with them. And I think they're risking quite a bit here. Guess they're willing to play that game, but like between Tibbs and some of the roster stuff going on, it just feels like they are playing a dangerous game in some ways. And I guess for them, they should hope that it doesn't blow up on them. But I mean, this year just feels very. I don't know. After like each loss, just feels like such a gut punch because you're just like, I don't know. This team is built to like make the playoffs effectively, but is it a guarantee that will happen? I don't know. I don't know. It's really hard to nail down like how I feel about the season. And I guess look, the other part too is that like the reality is RJ playing like shit really like it really hurts because
And
what
that I
you're
don't put on
hoping.
the front office or even Tibbs.
Yeah, I don't either. And I just think like, well, I think what is on them is like they have put RJ Barrett with this coach, with Julius Randle, and they've hitched their wagon to this thing, and with Mitchell Robinson really as a starting center, they've hitched their wagon to this thing going into their third year now. The signs have never been particularly great with how all those pieces fit. They have not changed it. They've stayed with it. And in the meantime, RJ has not drastically improved. You can even argue this season anyway that he's regressed. So I don't know. I don't know if it's not on them directly, but I do think they bear some culpability for all of that stuff. But the NBA season is heating up, and there are still so many unknown factors that could go on. Like, can the Minnesota Timberwolves make the playoffs? Who knows? It's a good thing they did not make any big moves, and they have so much ammo to change their future. When I'm looking to get in on the action, I bet with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. New customers can bet just $5 pregame money line on any NBA team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. Check this out. Right now, everyone can earn up to a 100% boost with DraftKings stepped up same game parlays. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, place a same game parlay, and combine multiple bets like which team will win, total rebounds, and more. The more legs you add, the bigger the boost, the bigger your shot to win big. Download the app now, sign up with code TBPN, place a $5 pregame moneyline bet on any NBA team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. That's code TBPN, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. But like I do think like the art like a lot of this stuff just feels worse, right? Because RJ struggled so much. And like it builds this kind of like feeling that gnaws at you of like, where are we headed? Where's the ceiling for this team? What is going on? Why can't we never draft somebody who just comes in and is a surefire stud? You know? And like I'm not gonna lie, as a fan, like watching RJ this year has been really, quite frankly, it's been depressing. Like, I mean, that Portland game was one of the most abject performances I've seen from him. The lack of work ethic, like just the lack of hustle, and he looks so heavy. Like, it looks like he just got too jacked or something. I don't know, man. He's not moving particularly well. He looks a little bit better of late, but like every time he's trying to fight over a screen, it's like the hardest thing in the entire world. It's like he's like trying to storm the beach at Normandy or something. You know, it's so hard for him to do basic stuff like that. I mean, yesterday he got caught on a couple screens. Dylan Brooks burned him on a three. I highlighted it on my feed. I posted the clips, but like this stuff happens to him all the time now, and it's like he doesn't even leverage his strength to like bump guys off their spot defensively. He's not competing half the time. He's not boxing out. Like it's just brutal to watch him. And then on top of it, you have like the 3-point shot has obviously been a disaster. And then his decision making when he puts the ball on the floor has been a mess. So, you know, it just feels like you thought he was going to take the next step, and instead he's just been terrible, really. He is posting a career high 47% from two this year, but still not inspiring. And I mean, if we're going to be real, like there's been his mid-range game has been non-existent. There's been no growth there at all. I'm happy he's not taking as many of those shots, if that's the case. But the fact that he's like not even looking at it kind of makes you. I think anybody that's concerned about his ceiling, like that's the thing that you should be looking at that concerns you with ceiling. But like the people that are really pissed off, I don't know. The offense, like I generally think that stuff will come around. It's the defense and the rebounding and like just the general hustle and speed he's playing with. That's the stuff that really has disappointed me and like honestly makes me very concerned about him moving forward long term.
Yeah, I mean, how I guess part of the question is how much of a sample do you need for this to be more than a blip or something you can't come back from?
It's quarter of the season so far. I mean, and if we're going to be real, like if we're going to be just, I think it's worth it. He's a fourth-year player who's got his nice extension. He's never been particularly efficient, right? His best efficiency season was his second year, 53.5 true shooting, and it was 53.5 true shooting, even though he shot 40% from three that season on 309 attempts. He shot a lot of threes, shot them really well, and he still was a below league average efficiency player. Like at some point, the efficiency has to come. Like we can sit here and talk about decision making, and okay, but you got to just make more shots, or you got to get to the line more. Whatever it is.
So how much of it? On that note specifically, I think the key ingredient is his finishing, right? For the efficiency. So how much of that do you think is shot selection, which is tied to the decision making, versus bad technique and touch?
I don't know what extent, but I think significantly. So if the decision making,
so then that's still pretty fixable, right? That seems more fixable than like, quickly becoming an elite finisher because he lacks certain tools, right? He unlike RJ, he's a better decision maker on those kickouts. But if RJ's problem is he just takes too many bad shots, it still seems pretty fixable, and he showed it for parts, right? Getting rid of that tunnel vision.
Yeah, but you got to do it consistently. Like it can't be like, oh, he's done it for 3 games and then he goes back to like, not doing it. It like there has to be consistent growth. Like if we're gonna be like, who has improved more? Who improved more in their first 3 years in the NBA, or let's just say since Tibbs came on? RJ Barrett or Manuel Quickly?
Statistically, RJ. No, it's Quickly.
Right. Okay. Who improved more in that same time period? RJ Barrett or Obi Toppin?
Obi. I mean, both Quickly and Obi were starting from lower floors, but yeah.
Okay. And who has improved since we acquired Cam Reddish?
Yeah, Cam.
Who's been better this year? Forget improve. Who's just been better this year? Cam Reddish or RJ Barrett?
Cam.
Who's been better from what little we've seen so far? Who's been better, Quentin Grimes or RJ Barrett?
It's pretty. I mean, Quentin Grimes not shooting well hurts. But
yeah, I'm just saying
he's
this
not
year.
asked to
Just
do
just
much.
this year.
He's
Just
not
this year.
asked to do as much. I'm not so sure I would say Grimes, just because he doesn't contribute it. He's doesn't get in the way. He doesn't make as many negative plays on offense as RJ, but RJ is asked to do more. So
Okay. If you asked Quentin Grimes to do more, do you think he could?
not what RJ does. Not very efficient.
Well, you're not going to have the same type of player, obviously.
I think I'll give you this. Grimes is shooting what I believe to be a very anomalously low percentage from 3 that I don't expect to continue. So if he was shooting league average from 3, it would probably be a much cleaner decision, and you'd probably say Grimes.
And the point is, like, the fact that it's even like a thing that we can discuss is crazy. Like, it's crazy. This should not be like, our conversation should be: is RJ Barrett
better than Brunson?
Should RJ Barrett be pushing for an All-Star bid this year? Like, should he be in the All-Star conference? That should be the conversation we're having right now. Not that he definitely is an All-Star, not that he deserves it, but should he be in the mix? He's not even close. He's not close. There are guys who I have shit on who are not in my you can make a pretty reasonable argument right now, today, that DeAndre Hunter is a better player than RJ Barrett, which is insane to me. Like, that's ludicrous. That shouldn't be a conversation. That shouldn't be a consideration. RJ Barrett should be playing a different sport than that guy. He should be running laps around him. Like, it is concerning to me. It is concerning to me. I don't think we can just keep brushing it off and, he's going to... I'm not saying that you were brushing it off, but, like, I am very concerned. The decision-making stuff this year especially worries me a lot, as is the defensive drop-off, because it feels like he got that contract and his expectation was, okay, I got the contract. I'm the man now. I'm going to be featured, whatever. And I have to show that I'm worth it by being this offensive centerpiece all the time. And he's abandoned these other things that he did to great effect. Like his second year in the NBA, I mean, forget the shooting. I thought his defense was really fucking good. He never missed rotations. He never, he never did that. He's missing rotations now all the time. He's not boxing out all the time. He's playing selfishly. Like, there's a difference between, okay, he missed a read versus playing selfishly. He's playing selfishly right now. I mean, there were a few they had a drive-in transition against Portland. He drove. He got fouled. I didn't actually think it was a foul. He got fouled. Whatever. He goes to the line. On that play, though, he had Jalen Brunson wide open on the wing, and at no point did the guy defending him who ended up fouling him, did anybody in the stadium believe that he was going to pass it? Like, he's playing selfishly right now. There's a clip that I posted of him driving into the paint on 3 or 4 guys. Quickly's literally standing at the top of the key, clapping. You want to know who did that? You want to know what that reminded me of? That reminded me of R.J. Barrett. R.J. Barrett used to clap when Randall would drive and he'd get like 3 or 4 guys on him. He'd be clapping. He's playing like Randall. He's playing like the wing version of Julius Randle. And I don't mean that as a compliment at all. Like,
Yeah, I was confused because I thought you were a big Randall fan. So.
oh yeah, no, I'm a huge Randall guy. No, but it's like I don't know. I watch it and it just I don't know. I'm concerned about him. That's all I can say. I really, really think it's important and imperative that if they want him to be a long-term piece for this team, they have got to get rid of Julius Randle and they have got to move on from Tom Thibodeau. I really am worried about the stuff that I'm seeing now from him. And I'm worried that it won't change unless you bring in somebody with a new voice and create a new team dynamic without Julius Randle. I'm worried about how he can, I don't want to say turn it around in New York, but get to the level that we need him to get to.
Get back on track.
Yeah, I mean, he has to get to a certain level, right? Like they made a bet on him. He has to get to a certain level and he's falling woefully short right now.
Yeah, can't really add much to that. It hasn't been good. It's very disappointing to see, and it's the first time we've really seen one of the young players really let the team down. I mean, quickly had a rough stretch last year. RJ has been bad for stretches of his career, but this is the worst RJ's ever looked since being a rookie.
Yeah, I mean,
on both ends.
It's really rough. It is really, really rough, and
I guess that is why I'm a little more optimistic because, like, I know he's not this bad. Like, I've seen him play much better than this.
Yeah, I mean, it's man. I like hate that I'm even having this conversation. I don't know. It actually, let's do this. Let's do this on the pod, and then everybody can hate what we say. I'm gonna pull it up right now. Our good buddy John Schmelk, your favorite Giants fan, Stacy. John Schmelk, he posted this question, which I thought was pretty interesting. I didn't answer it because I didn't want my inventions turned into a fucking disaster zone. But I haven't really thought about it.
I did answer that, and I did not get my mentions turned into a disaster.
Well, I guess I have to retweet your answer and ruin that for you.
I don't know if you agreed with it, but
I didn't even see what you posted. But this was I thought this was an interesting exercise. I'll just read out his full tweet. Give John a follow if you don't follow him. This is at Schmelk, SCHMEELK on Twitter. Question for Knicks fans: not taking salary into consideration at all, rank these players 1 to 6 in terms of which you would most want to have on your team the next 4 years, with 1 being the player you want most. RJ, Obi, IQ, Grimes, Cam, Mitch. Very curious about your ranks.
Yeah, I will give them to you now. So you can you guess who my first player is?
I'm gonna guess it's Quickly.
Yeah, Quickly's top there. Right now, just even if he's a league average 3-point shooter, which I think he will be better than still, that's like a top 50 player conservatively. If he gets back to the shooting that many project, given his free throw shooting and his shot diet, I think that that's a borderline all-star. I have RJ below him. I do think RJ still has a higher ceiling, but it's just been very, very frustrating this year. I think when he's locked in, he's a two-way player who can get to the rim, who can find rollers in pick and roll, and who can kick out the shooters, and that's a very valuable player as a secondary creator, but I just haven't seen it this year. Third is Cam, and Cam is pushing both those guys ahead of him for that matter, because Cam is the he's not a unicorn in the sense that it's used, but he is one of the holy grail archetypes as a long switchable wing who can get to the rim, finish through contact. He arguably is arguably has the highest ceiling on the Knicks. That's no longer the crazy take, and I'm not talking about Paul George outcomes. I'm talking about like even a Wiggins type outcome. I'm not sure RJ can get there. This version of Wiggins. So Cam has been really good. Next I have Grimes, just elite point of attack defense, and I do think the shooting is going to come. And I think he is like you watch his form, you watch his ability to get shots up at volume and hit contested shots, plus the passing. I still don't think he'll ever be the creator IQ is. I think they're pretty close on defense, but I would give IQ the advantage over them based on creation. And then my last two are Mitch and Obi. Obi does way more on offense. Even when he's not scoring the ball well, his movement not that helps. But I've said this a lot. I am skeptical always about the efficacy or the ability to rely on a four who is not great on defense, who can't provide great help defense. Obi tries his ass off. I love him as an offensive juicer on a team that's putting Julius Randle ahead of him. I struggle to see why that's a good concept, but my preferred four archetype is kind of more in like
Jaren Jackson Jr.
Jaren Jackson Jr. is the ideal, but like even guys like I like Jabari Smith Jr. I like Tari Eason, like the athletic rim protectors who can switch. Even a guy like Cam who offered a little bit more rebounding. And that's why I think I see him more as like a good rotation player, something like a Montrezl Harrell, who can hit threes too. More than like, but more that than like a staple. But if he gets back to shooting 44% from three, who knows? But I do have Mitch over him because like the archetype of an elite rim protector who can still rebound very well is more rare than people think. Because most of the guys who are elite rim protectors have to pass on a lot of rebounds. Like if you think about how shitty the Knicks defensive rebounding is, and you've mentioned this, like it was held together the last couple of years by Mitch. He's the only guy who is really reliable there. So
last year not so much. Last year they were pretty good. They were good as long as Sims was the other five. So but they sucked in the Noel minutes.
They sucked in the Noel minutes, and but Sims also like he played not as much with Julius Randle. He played fewer minutes. Like Julius Randle, not a good defensive rebounder. There's some stats that show that that I might be underrating him, but he misses a ton of box outs. RJ definitely this year hasn't, but I didn't think he was great last year. It's really been Mitch, and the fact that he contested so much again on a team that didn't have a lot of good perimeter defenders and was able to do that is pretty important to me. So I'm taking him over OB right now just because of the archetype and like team. I think it's easier to fit a team around an elite center who gives you that, even if his offense leaves something to be desired, than a guy who's playing an important defensive position and isn't quite as dynamic as maybe some of the really high end options there. Or Jeremy Grant is like the most like role player-ish type guy that I would prefer to like an OB type. I prefer Jeremy Grant to John Collins. So that's probably the reason why I'm not like I love watching Obi Toppin play, but I do him last on the list of a lot of players I like, in fairness.
What if I were to tell you that opponents this year have a 28.5 offensive rebound percentage when Mitchell Robinson is on the floor and a 26.6 offensive rebound percentage when Mitchell Robinson is off the floor? Is that something you might be interested in?
Probably not, because he plays most of his minutes with Randall and RJ. And
yeah, I hear all that. I'm more down on Mitch after this year. And like yesterday, he had his first half, especially. I thought he was super locked in. That fourth quarter, and like, look, let's be clear here. Julius Randle did him no favors. Okay, like absolutely not. Did not help him at all. But there were way too many times. And like, if you are an elite rebounding guy, right? You're an elite rebounding guy. You cannot give up the rebounds he was giving up to Steven Adams yesterday on the offensive glass, because there were 3 or 4 in the fourth quarter. He had inside position. He had him boxed out. He even had his hands on the fucking ball, and he could not come down with it. You got to come down with it. Maybe look, he's working his way back from an injury again. His conditioning is not where it should be again. We'll see if it gets better. But anyway, I don't want to turn this into the shit on Mitch thing. If I was doing this, I would have IQ 1. I've said that before. I don't need to explain why again. I would probably. Who cares? I would just put Grimes at 2 right now. Maybe I'm overreacting and maybe I'm being really mean and harsh on RJ because I have higher expectations for him. I just really have not liked what I've seen from him. And I really have liked what I've seen from Grimes in terms of his physicality and his burst. He looks fast. He looks really, really quick. When he's catching the ball, he looks like he can blow by guys. I think he has flashed some improvements as a ball handler, as a shot creator, which he's not able to fully leverage and realize right now because of the lineups that he's playing in and what his role is. I would be very curious to see what he could do with more usage, which is another reason, which is again more of a reason for us to move Julius Randle than anything else. But like I'm very, very interested to see what Grimes has done. And I say this as somebody who is not that high. I mean, I liked Grimes, but I was not as high on Grimes as I am now after last season. I think the fact that he's able to clearly show the plus impact he can have without even shooting the ball well yet, it means something. I think that means something. So I'm pretty excited about him. I'll say RJ after that because production over the course of his career has to matter for something.
So far you have quickly Grimes, then RJ.
Yeah, even given his concern as, for all the stuff we've talked about on this pod and other pods and stuff that I've been tweeting lately, I have Cam after that. I think Cam, honestly, you could rank a lot of these guys. I don't feel like super passionate about this. You could put Grimes at 4 and Cam at 2, or RJ at 2 and Cam at 3 and Grimes at 4. You can go in any which way. I think that the best thing you can say is that the Knicks actually have 3 wing prospects and Ace, a friend of the pod, Ace Zulo, he tweeted this out too. He's like,
"Is Grimes a wing?" Is the question, but sorry.
I think he's a wing. I think he's a 1 to 3 guy.
He's like he's 6'4.5".
He plays big. I don't care. If you can credibly check Jimmy Butler in the post, you're a fucking wing. I don't care. I think that the fact the Knicks have 3 wings who are all very different in what they do and how they operate is a good thing. And it's a thing they haven't had in a really long time. So kudos to the front office for most of that work. And Cam is really interesting, like you said, because he is that tall wing, which is arguably the most valuable archetype in the NBA. But we haven't used him at the 4 enough, so we don't know if we're getting enough out of that. So it's tough in that sense. I'd like to see more, but yeah, that's that. And then I'd put Obi at 5 and Mitch at 6. I know that I'm overly harsh on Mitch to some degree, but I also just think the limitations he has as a offensive player, his lack of screen setting, and the thing we saw the last few games on defense, and again, maybe it's because he's getting his legs back under him. He does not have the switch ability that he did have coming into the league when he gets defended, when he switches out onto the perimeter. That really impacts the way I view his ceiling. Maybe that's overly harsh. And I think Obi's the toughest one to rank because I think I can say this. I feel like with some confidence, if Obi played on a different team, a team that passed the ball, had a lot more player and ball movement, throw in the Warriors, throw him in Utah, throw him in a bunch of other teams. I think he is the player who probably would benefit from that the most of any of the Knicks young players. And I think he is the player who is hurt the most in terms of evaluating him, evaluating his current skill set, evaluating where he stands because of the coach, because of the rotations, because of the roster. I think he's the player that's hurt most by perception and all that shit compared to everybody else. And I just feel really, really bad for him because, like, actually, who was it that posted this? I want to say it was whatever. I can't even remember who it was. I'm gonna be really annoyed and I'll feel really bad about it. But I will get back to us on who it was. But he posted about how Obi Toppin, like, he plays, he plays 15 minutes a game. And yesterday, did he have a great game? No, he didn't. I thought his defense sucked yesterday. He missed a bunny on the IQ pass that he shouldn't have missed because he went up kind of soft. Ultimately, he played 15 minutes. He had 9 and 3. Like, that's not terrible. Like, it's not awful. And if you do the math,
when he does more than that, he doesn't get minutes.
right? And the fact is, like, when he plays, if you do the math per 36, that's like what? It's like 24 and 8 or something. Like, so he gets judged in the weirdest ways because we're only able to judge him on these insanely short stints that Tibbs has him on. I mean, he's played how many minutes? If you had to guess, how many minutes do you think Obi Toppin has played so far this year?
Total?
Yeah.
In 20 games?
Yeah.
Let's say 320 minutes.
354. It's just over 17 minutes a game. It's actually 17.7 minutes a game. It's his career high that he's played this year.
17:38 minutes per game. 17 minutes, 38 seconds.
Yep.
Shout out to anyone.
And his per 36 numbers are 17 points, 8 rebounds, 2.1 assists, 0.9 steals, 0.5 blocks. I've pointed out the comparisons before to Scotty Barnes, and these are only offensively, obviously, because Scotty Barnes is a much better defender. But his production offensively is not dissimilar to somebody like Scotty Barnes. He does not get to play through mistakes. He does not get to play when he's rolling. He doesn't get to get long stints in games. So he has to deliver when he's in the game. And if he doesn't deliver, all we remember is, Obi missed all these shots and, he only ended up with 4 points and 2 rebounds in 14 minutes tonight. But, like, and this really pissed me off. I forgot who tweeted this. But it's like, if you play 36 minutes in a night, you might have a 14-minute stretch where you only have 4 points and 2 rebounds. You know what I mean? Like, you need to play the 30, 35 minutes to get the totality of it, to really play yourself into a game and get into the flow. And
this is what people didn't get about Obi's shooting last year. I was arguing with someone on the internet, and when he finally got minutes, he was shooting a lot better last year, right? And they were like, well, that doesn't mean he's suddenly a 40% shooter. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that if you get 1 or 2 attempts per game, we've seen that the hot hand theory has been debunked. And we've seen lots of good shooters who come out of college and they can't earn minutes because of other reasons, and then their percentages aren't great. When Obi got real minutes, he was a good shooter. I guess to your point, I guess my question is this. I know that Mitchell Robinson is a capable, I would say above average starter at center in the league at worst, and with a couple of elite skills. Do you think if Obi's defense does not improve, can he be more than like Montrezl Harrell, like ideally a sixth man or like a really good rotation piece, but that's kind of it? You think this is a guy who can start on a championship team?
I mean, start on a championship team? I don't know. I don't know if Mitchell Robinson can start on a championship team. I don't know if any of these guys can start on a championship team.
I think Mitchell Robinson could start on the Warriors. I think Mitchell Robinson could. You don't think he's better than Kevin Looney?
I don't think he'd ever start on the Warriors.
You don't think he's better than Kevin? Like, I guess we disagree on that. I think
I think it
started over Brook Lopez because of the unique fit with Giannis.
I don't think he would start on the Warriors because they require their bigs to do a lot. Like Kevin Looney is not obviously, he's not Hakeem Olajuwon or something, right? But he is comfortable running DHOs way out high. He's a great screen setter. He's decent with the ball in his hands. He's a good decision maker. I think his defense is really, really underrated. I don't think they would they've had one serious vertical rim running guy, right? JaVale McGee, and they brought him off the bench as a part-time player.
Wiseman?
Dude, that pick is I feel so bad.
Imagine if they had LaMelo or Bane. Desmond Bane, you're not going to say, why did you pick the 27th pick? But also just thinking about how fun Desmond Bane would be.
I don't know if you remember
next
this,
season.
but we were talking about this last year because they had the 7th pick and the 14th pick, right, in that 2021 draft. And I remember being like, I would offer the 14th pick for Desmond Bane. Like, I would just offer that straight up and see if Memphis would do it. And I don't know if Memphis would have done it. I think they might have done it at that time. I think at that time they might have been like, yeah, this is a good, like, yeah, we took this guy 30th and now we're parlaying that into the lottery in a more loaded draft. Like, I think they would have done that.
My bet is I don't
And
think they would have because Bane. I
but
think they were high on Bane, but
maybe. But I'm saying like I would have maybe even offered the 7th. Who knows? But like, whatever. This is neither here nor there. But they have just.
I mean, they with the 14th pick, they did get a guy who I do think is going to be really good.
I just don't think they have
I like Moses Moody a lot, but
I like Moses Moody. I just don't think they have the. I think they're trying to balance too much, and I don't think those guys have taken. Like, it's really hard to develop young talent while you're trying to compete, and not just develop them, but develop them while like they need them to play minutes. It's really hard because those guys need to fuck up to develop, and when you're trying to win championships, like that stuff gets magnified and heightened so much. Which is why, like, I've never been high on James Wiseman, but I feel really bad for him because I'm like, you never even had a shot. But to go back to your Obi point, like, I just don't think we know, man. Like, I really don't, because we can say, oh, well, Obi. All I know is when Obi actually has had a chance to start games, especially like the last, end of last season, he didn't look out of place. I mean, we played. He had to match up against Charlotte when they had Miles Bridges available to them. He had to match up against, Miami, who had PJ Tucker at the time. He didn't get bullied by PJ Tucker. He actually had a really good game against him. He played against John Collins. He had a good game against John Collins.
That's not what worries me, though, the one-on-one matchups with scores.
No, I understand.
And I think it's really important, yeah.
I totally get what you're saying. But we don't know. Like, he has not played enough. And we've seen stretches where he has good help defense. We've seen stretches like the last couple of games where he absolutely sucks. Like, he has to play more, and we have to see more. Without seeing it, all I'm left with is like some good, some bad. I don't know, somewhere in between. I'm not really sure. It's just I know it's a total cop out, but like this is also why I have him 5th, right? Because I believe he could be, but it's just a belief. I have way less meaningful sample on him, even compared to Cam, which is insane, right? Because since Cam has become a pick, this year especially, we've seen Cam play high stakes, high leverage situations more consistent than we've ever seen from Obi. And like, while I think Cam had a rough go of it yesterday against Memphis, like we've seen him in situations play really well.
He was. That's another thing.
Yeah.
I get the decision to play him. Like, I think Grimes would have been the better decision. But for a coach like Pop, where we don't have a million other concerns, I think it would have been more like, you could have won this game if you did that, more than like you're an idiot type of thing. That's
maybe. I just think it's stupid to not play Grimes, regardless of who was over. I just think he had to play at the end of the game. But the point being, like, I just think we've seen more of it with Cam already as a Knick, which is crazy, which is why I feel a little more comfortable putting him above Obi. And also, like, the fact that he is that archetype matters. Like, it has to factor into it. Obi is a much more specific, much more tricky player. So, like, again, we still don't know, like, what if Obi got to play with, like, Cam and Grimes and Brunson, and then you have him with Mitch at the 5? How does that look? Is that a unit that now can protect Obi's worst qualities as a defensive player and actually leverage the fact that he's just active and runs all over the place and will give you effort? Is that a unit that can protect him enough and leverage his offensive skill set? Like, it's interesting to think of, like, what is the group, what is the type of unit where you might really unlock Obi. And I just, we haven't even bothered to try to find out, which is kind of like, again, that goes back to not that's not a Tibbs issue at this point, right? That's a front office thing. So, all right.
Yeah, I think we're pretty aligned on Obi, but I think that, I value what Mitch brings relative to what you get on the center market more, even with Jericho emerging, by the way. And I think Jericho Sims has probably earned his way to be on, not to criticize John, does a lot of great work, but I think he's earned his way on that list also. So maybe that's I think that's a topic for next time. Does Jericho Sims figure into that list?
Yeah. And also, just real quick, I think Hartenstein fucking sucked yesterday, and if this is how we're going to use him, I would much prefer that we just trade him and give Sims all those minutes because
It's a little bit like the Fournier move, where Tibbs just you have in theory a good offensive player. Tibbs doesn't deploy him properly, and I think Hartenstein can look a lot better on defense when you play him with like aggressive. Like he has to play drop, right? He is a drop only big. You need to play him with guys who can get over screens. He's a horrible fit with Jalen Brunson. He's not a great fit with Quickly on offense yet, but with reps, I think that but playing with Quickly or Grimes at all times, and I think he can look better. But I agree, like you're not even getting the benefit of that on offense right now because you're not letting him do some of the high post stuff, some of the other things that we've seen that he can really thrive in. Some of that is time. I mean, free agent acquisitions from much better organizations struggle with incorporating better players than Hartenstein. So I'm not gonna rip Tibbs as much for that, but we need to see some returns on both ends from that. So
I mean, I'll rip Tibbs for it because Tibbs is the one that's choosing to play him over Sims at this point. So, like,
yeah, but I mean, in terms of getting the comfort with a new free agent acquisition, especially one with a little bit more.
But you have to work towards it, right? Like, it doesn't like. Are we using like? I don't even see in games. He had like one pass yesterday to Quickly, which Quickly didn't read it, and it ended up being a turnover. I actually had no problem with it because I understood what Hartenstein was looking at, and I understood that Quickly didn't see it. He was trying to screen for Rose and then pop out for three. It was fine. It was like, okay, it's two new guys that are trying to figure out, get on the same page. That's fine. But like that was just an off the cuff, like in the moment type of thing. It wasn't like some Tibbs wants to use Hartenstein in the high post to like open up the offense or something, right? And it's like that just concerns me because it's like, well, what you signed this guy with this specific skill set, your coach doesn't even is not interested in even really trying to explore what that could do, and you're cool with it apparently. So look, it's really hard not to like dump on Hartenstein sometimes, but it's also very important to note that like, yes, Tibbs is asking him to change and adapt to a role as he sees it, which isn't necessarily even close to optimizing what Hartenstein's skill set is and what he can provide. And look, if they're gonna keep Tibbs, they should probably trade Hartenstein. Is how I feel about it. But maybe Tibbs
I'd rather fire Hartenstein.
Yeah, fire Hartenstein.
Rather fire Tibbs. And but I mean, it's worth noting that if Hartenstein's such a great screen setter, does more on offense, still bad on Tibbs' scheme. And if Robinson is such a bad screen setter and doesn't do anything on offense, still allegedly bad in Tibbs' scheme, there's a common denominator there. It's not either of the centers.
Oh, Jalen Brunson.
What?
That's who it is, right? The common denominator.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, but we didn't even talk about Jalen Brunson's awesome. Continues to be awesome. What a signing.
Anyone who thinks that was a bad contract is dumb. Anyone thinks we shouldn't have signed him because we already have Randall and RJ is even dumber. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense to me because we're all like, should we trade? Like, we need to trade Randall, and everybody's like, what's up with RJ? Like, is he a long-term piece? Should we be like, yeah, I've had thoughts about RJ, right? But it's like they did sign this one guy who is absolutely delivering exactly what you hoped for.
But the criticism of him, it's so circular, right? They criticize RJ and Randall, but you're like, what about Brunson? They're like, well, he doesn't fit with RJ and Randall. So it's like, well, that's the problem, not the fact that they signed a guy who's still, by the way, thriving, like in spite of that.
Yeah, I mean, like I think the very basic thing is this. With RJ, he's like, I got a lot of criticism. I don't know. There were people that are really fucking weird. After the Portland game, I was just like, I was pretty fed up with both RJ and Randall. And I was like, look, Randall is what he is. There's no point in even being upset about it. He's a 9th-year vet. Like, there's really the fact that he even changed his shot chart and his shot chart is better is probably the best you can hope for. He's not going to fundamentally become a different player. He's not going to evolve. He's not going to adapt. He's not going to improve. Fine. RJ is 22. he can improve. Like he can make these. He can improve his decision making. He can improve his defense. He can do all these things, but he has to do it. And there are people like, "Oh, you're being so soft on RJ," and I'm like, "How are you, is that what you're getting out of this?" Anyway, the point is that like Brunson is your best player. So Randall, like one of the arguments for signing Brunson was that he would like unlock Julius and make his life easier. And that's all well and good. But my thing is like if Julius isn't doing anything to make his life easier, who cares? Like that doesn't really matter. It doesn't move me. And if we're gonna be real, like the same thing probably should be said about RJ right now too. Like these guys need to figure out how to play better around Jalen Brunson because he is the best part of the team. He's the key to everything here at this moment in time. And if they can't figure that out, then I think the front office needs to make tough decisions. And we'll see if they do. All right. I think that's a good place to end it. Stacy, I know you have some shit you need to get to. So let people know where they can find you and plug anything that you would like to plug.
You can find me at Stacy Patton 89, and I would like to plug the fact that I've seen one loss from either of my football teams this year, the Michigan Wolverines, and for all you Giants fans out there, the Philadelphia Eagles. Fly Eagles, fly, babe. Yeah, it's. I'm trying to. The Knicks are getting to me, but there's so many good vibes. It's a good time overall still. So sorry, I'm not as miserable as everybody else. But hey, Giants are looking good too. So you guys have some consolation too.
I have nothing to plug, so I will just plug all the work at the Strickland, all of the podcasts. Check out the rundown, check out the mailbags, check out Pod Strickland if that's your cup of tea. That's it.
If they're
That
here,
our
it is
show.
their cup of tea, right?
Yes. Yeah, and I will also plug Ohio State sucks. They deserve everything that happened to them this weekend, and I hope
And
they.
more.
Yeah, I hope that they extend Ryan Day, who's doing a great job. I think they should also extend. What is it? Tim Knowles, Jim Knowles. Yeah, he did a really great job with their defense. They spent an entire year trying to fix the run defense after Michigan ran for 7.8 yards per carry against them last year, and they did a great job of holding the Michigan Wolverines to 7.8 yards per carry this past Saturday.
Without their starter and with a dude playing with one hand.
Yep. So shout out to any Buckeyes listening to this. You guys have really earned it. Great season. Enjoy Pasadena. I'm sure the Rose Bowl will be fun. But that is our show for today. I hope everybody has a great week, and I will see you on Friday.